Welcome, modern day mystics, fellow truth seekers, James and Justin, back again with another reaction video. And I guess this video's kind of been a long time coming. We've looked at a lot of faiths, but we've never looked at Catholicism like thoroughly or individually. So what we're going to do is we're just going to take a look at the basic structure, I guess, of Catholicism by this video done by I Am Your Target Demographic YouTube channel.
All right.
So let's dig in.
Welcome to I Am Your Target Demographic. Today we're diving into the world of Catholicism. We're going to cover how the religion came to be, what they believe in, and some of the supposed controversies about the religion. Let's start at the beginning. And by the beginning, I mean the 1st century, the story of Jesus. The story of Jesus tells us of a man who was born to a virgin mother named Mary and grew up to become an incredible role model for the world. In religious texts like the Bible, Jesus is the Son of God and part of the Holy Trinity. It was his destiny to die at the hands of the people and sacrifice himself to take onto himself the sins of the world, so that anyone who believed in him could gain entrance to heaven. After Jesus was killed, he returned to life 3 days later to say his goodbyes to his loyal apostles, men who would now travel the world and tell of these stories, as Jesus took his place at the throne of heaven. That process of sharing the
I was just thinking that in a lot of other faiths, they don't like it when you depict their prophets or their religion or whatever like that.
Depends on them. Hindus are okay with it.
Yeah, Hindus I guess are okay. Christians are definitely okay with it.
Yeah.
How many times has like the story of Jesus been done in a movie or on TV or something like that?
Or for a Christmas pageant, it'll be like, like.
Yeah, and I wonder if the people get offended. Like, does anyone get offended with like, hey, that's not how we dressed, or that's not like, are they doing it right?
That's a good question. You know what I was kind of thinking? I was thinking a couple of things. I was like, do you think Jesus would like you? You know what I mean? Like, if he was around, do you think you'd be one of the people, or is it like Jesus likes everybody?
Yeah.
You know, like, I like Jesus. I like Jesus.
Yeah.
I'm curious if there's anybody that's like, I don't like the way he was, But so much of Jesus' story seems to be like orchestrated by God the Father, right?
Yeah.
You're looking at the end there where he's crucified. And that always gives me a bit of pause for thought. Like, he's got that crown of thorns. And I'm like, does that reflect God's nature, or does that reflect man's nature? In the sense that if you went to another planet, what would their religion look like? Would there be like a little alien on a, I'm not trying to get blasphemous here.
Yeah.
But would it be like, and then the great Zibzorb, came out of the ocean and would they look at our thing and be like, what do these creatures believe? What are they looking at? And they see a bunch of people going to a thing, and there's one of their guys is on a cross.
Yeah, there's a lot of violence within many faiths. Like, there's the stories of violence.
Who does that reflect? Does it reflect us
or God
or the Lord?
Yeah, good question.
The death and rebirth of Jesus, called the Gospel, continues today. The Catholic Church is the closest thing to what the church looked like back in those ancient days, as we'll dive into their ritual and traditions later on. In most discussions about religion, the term Christian will get used, but it's important to know what that means. If a Christian believes that Jesus did indeed die for their sins, then Catholics are indeed Christians, as are other groups such as Latter-day Saints and Seventh-day Adventists. But back in the days following Jesus, there was only one church of Christians, which evolved during the Roman Empire to be called the Roman Catholic Church. There have been several splits, which is why the Roman Catholic notation is important. The first big split came in the early 1000s, where Greek and Latin Christians had some serious disagreements fundamentally and logistically. It's been 1,000 years, remember, and the church has spread itself across the globe. So naturally things will evolve and adapt and eventually become incongruent. So we have what is called a schism, where we get the Roman Catholic Church and the Eastern Orthodox Church. The other big split came later in the 1500s and 1600s, a huge span of time called the Reformation, where the church was split again into what are now called Protestant churches, who rejected the rigidity, tradition, and the rule of the church administration, and instead focused on grace through faith alone. Again, this is a complicated story involving many years and many people who made this happen. But what you need to know is there are now essentially 3 groups of quote-unquote Christians, which include the Catholics, the Orthodox, and the Protestants. Under each you'll see variations, but these 3 big umbrellas should give you a decent understanding to move forward. So
I just learned something new. I didn't know that. I didn't know that there was... I always thought of it as Catholic and Protestant. I didn't know about... Like, I'm curious about Orthodox. Now I gotta go learn something about that. But I don't know if there is any faith out there that has as many sects and splices and denominations and subsectors like Christianity.
You mean like
wild?
You mean like the Baptists, the
There's
Nazarenes,
like 3,000 types of Baptists, I think. Like there's like a lot of denominations, man, and then like denominations under denominations, man. It's wild.
And then in these days, since numbers have sort of dwindled a little bit in the Christian churches, sometimes they join up. You get a lot of churches
make amends.
that come back together just to preserve that faith, you know?
Yeah.
Interesting. My wife was looking at some stats the other day, and it was saying something about the conservatives there's more conservatives on the rise.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah.
I think almost in a global, like there's this movement towards conservatism.
Yep.
Now, don't panic anybody that's not a conservative.
Yeah.
These things swing like a pendulum.
Yep.
You know, the only difference is, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't even have said that, because that might make people resist that idea in the future and do something unnatural.
Yeah.
It's natural. It's a natural progression if you look at history.
Yeah.
Anyway, side note.
back to Catholicism, now that you understand how it fits. It's an incredibly long-lasting religion, and many of their ancient beliefs are still in play. So let's dive into theology and tradition. Catholics today believe that because of Jesus dying on the cross, human beings have the ability to enter heaven. They exemplify this devotion by celebrating 7 sacraments, which they believe were left behind by Jesus to participate and rejoice in. The first sacrament is baptism, the act of devoting someone to Christ through a water ceremony. Catholics believe that everyone carries sin, including children, and they must all be baptized to enter the kingdom of God. How do children have sin, you might ask? Because of Adam and the quote-unquote original sin, Catholics believe that everyone is born with that inherent sin and temptation. The act is interesting in that anyone can perform a baptism.
Where do you stand on that? Because, you know, it's funny. Like, my mind has changed over time. There was a time where I was like, what? There's nothing more innocent than a brand new human with no reference. They only get corrupted by people. And then you swing over and you're like, people are pretty naturally selfish and violent and all kinds of things. Like, I oscillate a little bit. Where do you stand?
Like on like whether or not it's something that is okay to do to a child?
No, what I'm saying is with original sin, the idea is that we're born into sin and we're redeemed by Jesus Christ. That's the story, right? So do you believe we're, maybe take the word sin out of there, however, pagan or, way you want to put it.
You're going so deep there because when you're talking about good and evil, that's like a whole labyrinth to go down when you're talking about that. For me, there's like a paradoxical nature to good and evil, and whether or not you're born into it. To me, I feel like you're a primal being born into this, and you have to learn. You have to learn from your environment what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. So
right.
Whether or not we're labeling it as evil and good.
Oh yeah, and you've got a pretty good explanation of evil as being whatever threatens the ego, right? But it's imagine a 200-foot baby. It's babies, they're so... Some people think that you come into this earth pure and not bad. It's but if there was a 200-foot baby on your hands, it'd be smashing things over, trying to grab it and drink it like a baba and having a tantrum. Not out of sin necessarily, but but it's not crazy to think that we're born into sin and then we're redeemed. It's not intuitively that far off from what you're saying that we're carnal beings, and then we adjust to the society that we're in.
I guess in many facets, I'm still willing to learn. I'm kind of unsure about it, right? So we'll just keep learning.
If it comes to a life or death situation, even atheists can baptize, assuming that they perform the act with the intent to baptize and dedicate the act to the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, which is a statement called the Trinitarian baptismal formula. The second sacrament is called the Eucharist, or commonly known as communion. If a child or an adult just becoming Catholic completes their baptism, it's likely followed by their first communion. Communion is the act of eating bread and wine, which Catholics believe are actually the body and blood of Christ, transformed through an act of a priest called transubstantiation. They perform a certain rite which makes this food and drink become the body and blood of Christ. In other forms of Christianity, the bread and wine merely represent the body and blood as a symbol. Only individuals who have confessed their sins should receive communion. We'll talk about confession later. The third sacrament is the last one of what is called the sacraments of initiation, the 3 steps to become a member of the Catholic Church. Confirmation. This act, as the name implies, confirms that the person in question understands the dedication to God and is willing to devote themselves to the Church. This used to be tied to baptism, and the child would be immediately confirmed, but more recently it's become standard for children to reach an older age so that they understand the claim that they are making when they do their first communion and confirmation. Those 3 sacraments are the initiation into the Catholic Church, but the rest of the sacraments are lessons and rites passed down by Jesus Christ that can help humans to thrive and endure on earth. Gifts given to mankind. The first of these gifts is called penance. This act allows a human to confess their sins to a priest and to be absolved of that sin, washed clean of it. This requires the Catholic to confess any and all sins with a desire to not commit those sins again, and requires the priest to perform an act of reparation to absolve this person of their sins. The priest is required to maintain secrecy about any and all sins confessed. The next sacrament is a gift given to those that are about to pass.
Oh, how would you feel about that, man? Spilling your guts to some guy behind a wall that you can't even see. And what if you go to that church and you actually know who it is? Come on, man. Think about all the deepest, darkest thoughts you've ever had. Come on, are you spilling all that?
Well, I'm so OCD, obsessive compulsive, that I often wonder how religion works at all, because I would be in there, they'd be like, Mr. Sampson, you can't come confess any more sins. Like, I'd be weird about it, right? But I think some people have a knack for riding that socially intuitive line. Like, when I was growing up, people would be like, there's certain things you lie about. I'd be like, you're a religion, you're a Christian. And they'd be like, come on, don't be an idiot. Sometimes you gotta, and I don't, whatever thing I'm on, whatever issues I got, I don't understand that stuff. I'm like, things are black and white, and so it's my lifelong mission to resolve that. But I imagine a functioning church. First of all, some of those priests have heard some wild stuff, without a doubt. There's some of those churches are open all the time. There's street people coming in like, I just stabbed someone to death, But I assume that they pick their clergymen pretty carefully in a lot of them, and that some of them probably understand, how to deal with people's issues,
Yeah, I just think that's wild.
Well, I mean, there's a lot we could say. I'm not trying to get too dark here. Okay? It's not like I'm not aware that where there could be issues.
Yeah. Well, maybe a question out there is, do you ever feel like you just can't say some stuff to the person behind
then what do you do? Then what do you do? It's like, I can't be absolved of this one. Or whatever. I don't know.
Pass, called the anointing of the sick. A priest can help prepare someone old or sick as they near death by using oils to bless their body. If they are unable to confess sins, a priest can even forgive their sins without it. When combined with communion and penance, the anointing is often called the last rites, to ensure that the sick are forgiven before they pass. The last 2 sacraments are about the roles that humans take in society and how those roles can enhance our lives. Firstly, there's the sacrament of marriage. The Catholic Church believes that marriage between a man and a woman is sacred and necessary. This is the only way that sexual activity is condoned, and the Church disapproves of contraception use, which can be a point of controversy. There is a method called natural family planning, in which a family can plan for when they have children by only having sex during times when the woman isn't fertile. The Church also does not recognize divorce, as marriage is a lifelong bond. Some predominantly Catholic countries don't even have a procedure for divorce, including the Philippines, in which divorce is actually illegal. In 2018, it's finally up for discussion, and after this video goes live, they may eventually legalize divorce. Only time will tell. The last sacrament to discuss The Catholic Church embraces what are called holy orders, which allows them to raise up members of the church into positions, such as deacons, priests, and bishops. This gives these members of the church the ability and blessing to perform some of these other sacraments, as well as speaking and service roles in routine ceremonies such as their regular church services called Mass. Aside from nuns, these roles are exclusively male. There is an ongoing debate over whether or not women can be deacons, or in this case, deaconesses. Why are women not allowed? If positions in the church structure are essentially imitating God, they believe that men who are created in God's image should be in those positions. Since we're talking about structure,
But right in the beginning, didn't it say God made them male and female in his image?
Yeah.
So doesn't that solve that?
Yeah. I don't know. I guess maybe like some other religions out there, right now in 2023, they're facing some of these social issues that I think eventually a lot of this stuff, it comes around. I think, like he said that thing about the Philippines in 2015, I think it actually passed. I don't know why that comes to mind for some reason, but it makes me think, I wonder if there was a bunch of divorces when that happened. They're like, divorces went on the rise in the Philippines when they legalized divorce. Maybe not all changes for the better, but, there's other things I'm thinking about too, like homosexuality and stuff like that, being allowed to, like, how this, obviously this video is a little old, but, wonder if some of those laws have even changed as of yet.
introduces our first 3 positions in the church administration. All of these positions can preach and give lessons, as well as baptizing and performing weddings. Only the priests can perform the Eucharist sacrament, receive confessions, and anoint the sick. And only the bishops at the top can perform this sacrament of the holy orders, ordaining church members to these other positions. These bishops oversee an area called a diocese, which is an equivalent to a region. Large dioceses might be run by an archbishop, which just signifies a high population region. Above these bishops are cardinals, which are bishops who have been handpicked by the Pope to be part of what is called the College of the Cardinals. These cardinals act as bishops or archbishops, but it is also their responsibility to elect a new pope when the time comes. Now let's talk about the Pope, since we're already in this far. Pope is a nickname for the Bishop of Rome and the ruler of the entire Catholic Church. Right now, Pope Francis sits in that position and rules from the Vatican, which is a self-sovereign state located inside of Rome. When the current pope retires or leaves the post, the College of the Cardinals convenes to decide a new bishop to elevate. If the vote is unsuccessful, black smoke rises from the Sistine Chapel to signify that discussions continue. When a vote is successful, white smoke comes from the chapel, and the world can rejoice that a new pope has been chosen. Yay! Pope Francis has been in power since 2013 and has been generally regarded as a breath of fresh air to the rest of the world, even showing more willingness to discuss social issues than past popes. He's made statements about loving those that have come out as gay, as loving the person and not loving the sin, and showing efforts to initiate interfaith dialogue. He's also been a strong supporter of climate change research and wealth equality. When he first began, he spoke openly about how some of these issues have been neglected, and he sought to bring them back to the forefront. The reception to Pope Francis has been mixed, with a large segment of quote-unquote traditionalist Catholics that want to go back to the old customs and traditions that have been lost over time. Now let's go back to theology and what Catholics actually believe. We talked about the sacraments and how to live out a Christian lifestyle through those tenets, but there's also a large emphasis on Mary in the Catholic Church. Mary is the Virgin Mother of Jesus who was chosen by God to bear his son. By giving birth to Jesus, she is also believed to be the spiritual mother of every member of the Catholic Church, so special attention is paid to thanking her. This veneration is encouraged by the Church, but it's always emphasized that it's separate and distinct from the worship of God. The Virgin Mary appears often in art and poetry, and Catholics might make pilgrimages to some of these sites, including the Virgin of Guadalupe in Mexico City and Our Lady of Aparecida in Brazil. So let's zoom out. Roman Catholicism is the largest sect of Christianity in the world, with over 1 billion members. Its largest concentration comes from Latin America, about 48% of their population. It's one of the world's oldest and still active religions, so it's no doubt that there have been some controversies along the road that have brought the church under scrutiny. One of the largest scandals was featured in the 2015 Academy Award-winning film Spotlight, which was based on a massive series of sexual assault cases that came to light involving Catholic clergy members and some non-Christ-like behavior. You'd think that a movie focused on this would be received negatively from the church, but it was actually the opposite. Key members of the church called it fairly accurate, but they did say that the movie didn't emphasize the way that the church has been reformed since those incidents. Overall, though, members of the church have been receptive to the movie, even though the actual incidents might be difficult to discuss. Thanks for watching our video on Catholicism.
One thing I find super fascinating about Catholicism or the Roman Catholic Church is that they have they're like their own little country within, they said they were like their own little sovereign state within another country. So they're like a country.
Yeah, I wonder if that means they can make their own rules.
Yeah.
What did you think of the pedophile stuff?
Well, it just made me think instantly of suppressing certain aspects of who you are. Like, so say you have a strong sexual desire and then all of a sudden, like, you've made this commitment for whatever reason, you've decided to, like, join the Catholic Church and become a priest, or I'm not exactly sure on who has to stay sexually celibate. But if you're, like, forced into a position like that, or if you make a decision, you know, you can change over time. You might have, like, your sexual appetite might develop. And what happens if you're, like, 5 years into, like, your priesthoodness, and you're like, well, now all of a sudden I want sex, but I'm stuck as a priest, and you feel trapped, and, like, you've got this whole life that you've built for yourself. You've got a congregation, you've got all these people. And then I just feel that when you suppress yourself, and it's not willful, you don't want to do it and you feel trapped, that can lead to some dark things that happen.
There's two ways of leading to dark things. One is to suppress yourself till it explodes in some bad behavior.
Yeah.
The other way is to get so free that you forget that the idea of perversion exists. And all of a sudden you're perverted.
Yeah.
And there's people, listen, everybody's got their dragon to slay. So there's people that narrowed in on this aspect of the Catholic Church, which by no means represents all Catholics.
Yeah.
But they found this corruption in it, and so they tried to tackle that dragon, right? I would imagine a clever person, whenever you're trying to, like somebody that you attacks that's like, whoa, you're right. That's under control now. Just beware of that. That's like it's a trick that tricky people do sometimes.
Yeah.
But again, that obviously doesn't cover the whole thing. But it's interesting because, talking about this stuff, like I don't want to even talk about this stuff, but I feel compelled to, like, bring out the awkward thing into the light, because it's got to be on someone's mind. I don't know if I'm thinking it, other people are thinking it.
Yeah.
But I was going to say, this corruption and stuff is found in every system. Daily, we have no shortage of opportunities to, like, forgive each other, forgive ourselves, get over, very difficult to get over stuff about humanity.
Yeah.
Always remember to be surprised and grateful that humans have the capacity to do anything good. Because in every system, there's stuff that's good and bad. Just don't only focus on the bad. Yeah. We want to, like, zero in on the bad and tackle it and deal with it. But it's like you overlook nothing's like that. Yeah. And is that fair to you? Is that fair? Would that be fair if that's how people looked at you? They only looked at everything bad you did?
Yeah. And well, if you look over all the years, think about how many, like, orphanages and things that were open and helping of the poor. I was thinking of Mother Teresa. Just brought up memories when we were thinking about, Catholicism. And all the, like, good that can also come from these things.
There's been people that have, like, had visions of Mother Mary and then went on to change their life. Or visions of Jesus, or visions of, we'll save it for other videos because this is just the Catholic video, but if you want to see what we have to say about other religions, go check them out too.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Okay, I guess we'll wrap this one up, guys. If you want to leave something in the comments, let us know. Maybe other Catholic videos we could maybe do some reactions on to dive a little bit deeper in. That'd be fantastic. And if you like this one, don't forget to hit the like, subscribe, share this with a friend, and everyone until next time,
stay spiritual.